Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guild House. This is a weekly podcast where I, your host Matthew Whitby, sit down with people all across the tabletop and RPG, DMsGuild surrounding space, and just sit down and chat about design, anything and everything. And this week I am privileged to be joined by Alan Tucker. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. How are we doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Yeah, I've this has been one of the weeks where I've found the joy for writing D&D content by putting one of my products on, like one of my writing projects, on the shelf to just write something different. So I'm just and it's weird how like jumping to a new project can kind of give you that kind of oomph that you needed.
Absolutely.
But I guess first and foremost, for the people kind of listening, how would you summarize what you're known for?
Well, I've done, I suppose, probably what most people know me for would be the encounter compilations. I worked with a whole bunch of folks early on when I started on the guild. After I put out a few adventures and then got into, we did some free products that were, the first one was called So a Cleric and a Vampire Walk into a Tavern. And that one, that was in late 2017 or early 2018. I can't even remember now. But anyway, it's been downloaded, I think, over 45,000 times the last time I checked. And
wow.
We did two spin-offs from that a year or so later, with Encounters on a Road and Encounters on a Magic Shop, and both of which were free, and had a whole bunch of people just write basically kind of a one-page sort of encounter and for those. And other than that, gosh, I've done a couple of big Eberron projects, Mournland and Demon Wastes, and a whole bunch of adventures and things like that.
So.
No, little of this and little of that.
No, awesome. And so you can mention, so before kind of jumping in and kind of doing some of these encounter kind of compilations, I suppose, is you said you were kind of doing like kind of some solo adventures. Was that back like before 2017? Was it like?
The first thing I published on the guild was in September of 2017, I think. I played back when dinosaurs walked the earth in the early 80s and through the mid 90s or so. And then life kind of got in the way of things, of course, as it does. And I didn't play for, I don't know, 20, 25 years, however long it was. And then 2017, I think that summer, I got involved with a group at my friendly local game store and did some West Marches stuff, and that was the first time I'd encountered 5e. I completely missed 3 and 4, but actually 5 was very similar, honestly, in a lot of respects to second edition and first, that I played as a kid. And it was just a lot, less complicated. Didn't have THAC0 and things like that anymore. Yeah. But I really just enjoy the heck out of it, and I've been a writer for quite some time, and I thought, well, I found the DMsGuild, and I thought, well, heck, I can do this. So I put some adventures together that I had written previously, and put them up there, and sold a few copies here and there. Not a whole lot, not a empty black status or anything like that, but it's been a lot of fun, and I just have continued to do so, and ever since. So
what was kind of the first drive to like when you stumbled across the DMsGuild? Was it literally just a case of like, I can do this, or was it like based on like your own DMing experience? Or you're like, I have kind of these half written up notes, or was it just like, yeah, I'm curious, like why dive in?
Kind of a little of both. Like I said, I've written, actually, I've got several novels that I wrote since, like 2009. I think I wrote several fantasy and science fiction novels, and those, they sell okay, but I kind of, like I said, I got onto the DMs Guild and thought, this would be something I could do, and because I also do graphic design and things like that, so it was kind of a whole package thing where
you can wear all the hats.
Yeah, exactly. And so I had 3 or 4 adventures I think I put together over the first 2 or 3 months and put them up there, and then started getting a little more, I guess, professional about it. I mean, they're decently done to start with, but as it is with all things, you learn as you go and get better at things as you do it more. So
I guess I'm kind of curious then. So again, I like writing a novel as compared to writing, let's say, an adventure. In my head, they feel like there is similarities, but also, again, a good amount of differences. Would you say so when you come to write a novel, or like when you come to write an adventure, is it a similar starting process, or are they are they on like different ends of the spectrum?
There's certainly some similarities. I would say, because generally what I do is I try to think of the ending first, and then kind of work back from there and think, okay, well, this would be, thinking about it cinematically, this would be really cool. If you were viewing it in your mind's eye as a movie, or playing it at the table, or whatever, whether it be the novel or an adventure, and then think, okay, well, so we got this endpoint, then how would it start? How would it begin? But writing adventures is certainly less time consuming than writing a novel.
Maybe just a little bit. Just a smidgen.
Yeah. So that was part of the appeal as well at the time. Was, I mean, it usually would take me anywhere from 9 to 12 months to complete a novel, and I could do these adventures in far less time, depending on what it was. So
how does it, I guess, because again, the big difference is, again, fundamentally the difference between like a novel versus an adventure is the fact that the adventure is player facing. You're writing it in a way that that there's going to be a group of 5 people maybe going along with the kind of the plan of things that you have set out. How I guess, like, how do you kind of navigate that way, so it's not like navigate your adventures in a way that it isn't necessarily so as prescripted as a novel, just because it's
Sure. Yeah. It's to me, it's all about character. And so if you have compelling, for an adventure, a compelling villain, or adversary, and then maybe some NPCs that the characters interact with along the way. If you've got some really solid characters for the players to interact with in the adventure, you're going to do very well, I think. And that way, because I guess what I'm saying there is the adversaries need to have goals, very well established. This is what this person, thing, whatever, is trying to do. And regardless of what the players do, they are going to continue to work toward that goal. So if you delineate that very well for the DM, and they can understand, okay, well, this person is their goal is X, and regardless of what the players are doing, that adversary is going to be working towards that, then they always have an idea in their head. Okay, well, even though the players maybe are kind of gone off on this tangent, this thing is still happening.
It's good because you kind of mentioned on kind of the two schools of thought in terms of like adventure and also somewhat encounter writing, in the fact that you can have the kind of very character driven approach where, again, you have like your nemesis or like a sort of hero NPC kind of coming in, or you have the kind of set piece, as you kind of mentioned with starting with like the ending first. You imagine like, oh, it'd be really cool to have like a floating prison of sorts, and that's your set piece, and then you kind of work backwards to kind of facilitate that. But either both of these things are kind of interesting, because it does kind of shape how you would write the adventure, whether it's a case of like, okay, well, this is an exciting location, how do we kind of spruce it up and give it that life, versus, okay, well, this is their goal, where do they need to, where would they be to complete this goal? So you kind of fill in the gaps as you kind of need to.
Yeah. And you're talking about the set piece or the setting is, I mean, in a way that is the character as well, or the adversary.
Yeah.
And so if you sit back and you take the time to flesh that out, excuse me, as much as possible. And again, with it knowing exactly, well, okay, this is what's going to happen, or this is how this setting is taking place, then the rest of it should follow pretty well.
And so actually, I did kind of want. So you kind of mentioned how you kind of started off with this kind of by writing mostly adventures, and over time you've kind of moved towards, I guess, kind of encounters as more of like a, or just doing a bunch of encounter.
Yeah.
Do you kind of, because again, encounters are in their own way somewhat like short form adventures.
Absolutely.
Was that kind of the appeal for it? That the fact you could, again, so if writing a book take 9 months, let's say writing an adventure takes a month, writing an encounter, you can probably get like that done in like, a day or a week.
Yeah. Honestly, what it was to begin with was a marketing tool. The cleric in a vampire going to tavern was just an idea that I thought, okay, I saw some other things out there where people had, they have a selection of things that are paid products, and then they have one or two things that are, what a retailer would call a loss leader, where you get somebody to download this for free and then say, oh, well, that's cool. What else has this person done?
Mm-hmm.
That type of thing. So I kind of pitched that to everyone, and had a whole bunch of writers, come in. I don't remember how many we had. It was at least a dozen or 14 encounters, I think, in that thing. And again, it's just free. But I put in links to everybody's guild pages and anything else that they wanted, that type of thing. And I did the layout for it and all that, which wasn't terribly complex at the time, and put it out. And like I said, it just, I still get notices on the guild newsletter, or not newsletter, but their
notifications
that a rating has happened or something like that. And it's just, continues to be downloaded, whether it's driving any sales, who knows? But
because you do like you set up for a nice kind of segue there, in the fact that, like, so some of your kind of newer products, you kind of have been kind of like, I guess, nothing short of like large scale collaborations.
Yeah.
When did you start kind of taking that dive of like, oh, I should bring more people on? Or was it the case of like, oh, people brought you on and you're like, oh, I can give that a go?
Well, I did do a couple of things after I put out the solo stuff that I did. I think Jeff Stevens asked me to write some of the villains and lairs pieces for him, and Artifacts of the Guild. I got in on that, wrote a few magic items, and ended up helping finish that layout for that piece, actually, when it was all said and done. And I just really enjoy the collaborative process in working with other people. It's terrific. It's part of the reason that the game itself is so much fun, and I enjoy playing with a variety of people just to get different perspectives on things, from young, old, any walk of life, any that sort of thing. I love having a really diverse group to play with, and as well as doing these collaborations. The Mornland book, I had probably 14 or 15 people, I think, on that one, and the Demon Wastes one was probably closer to 20. And the Incredible Creatures I'm working on now, I think I'm probably close to 50 by now. Different people that have actually contributed to that. So,
I mean, like, how do you manage 50 people, like with Incredible Creatures in particular? I mean, I imagine with some of these projects, I guess, because Incredible Creatures being essentially a collection of creatures, I imagine it's easy to kind of delineate like who's doing what. For some of the other ones, which is like I guess like a series of encounters or layers or what have you, I imagine it kind of gets that a little bit more nebulous than just stat block and the kind of fluff that with it.
Yeah, well, Incredible Creatures has its own Discord server, and that's been really good to just keep everybody in contact and on pace to complete things when they need to. But with the other projects, I just used Facebook. I think I made a Facebook group for those and posted things, but generally it was, I don't know, it wasn't that difficult. I didn't have to chase down too many people to say, okay, you need to get your stuff done. The Mornland book, it was mostly written by myself and Matthew, oh dear, I just lost his last name. Retinue. I'm butchering the pronunciation, I'm sure. But
there's Matthew Booth.
Booth, yes. Well, his Discord name is the other.
Okay, yeah.
I got confused. Anyway, you see, I didn't really know a whole lot about Eberron, having skipped third edition, etc. And so I just had we when the Wayfinder's Guide came out, a bunch of us thought, well, hey, let's look at Eberron and see if we can do some stuff. And the Mornland was a perfect place to start, I thought, because it just they leave it so open.
Yeah, and anything goes.
Yeah, and so Matthew did a lot of the lore, and he and I kind of got together and wrote out. We just kind of fleshed out a lot of those dots on the map that are basically, that's all they are. They have names in a little thing, but for the most part, there isn't a whole lot of information about them at all. So we went back to some of the third and fourth edition books and things like that and found what we could, and then fleshed it out from there. And then for that one, I've got a bunch of artwork and had people write monsters for the most part. For that one, we had a little bit of encounter and adventure types of things in there, but mostly that one was a monster book for the most part.
No, as I say, it's nice you kind of preempted my question there, because obviously there is kind of like a few kind of Eberron products kind of sprinkled in, and I was kind of curious whether it was like again, I've said this in the nicest way, but the people who create Eberron content, they're like a close-knit family. Or cult, depending on your but no, so it was literally this case of like the Wayfinder's Guide, which kind of had recently came out, that you just like, okay, well, I dip my toes into the Eberron side of things.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, it's Forgotten Realms is great, but it's one of those things that I don't know, I kind of tire of quickly. And plus the fact that there's just so much content out there for it. And I'm sure there's places in it. I know Joe Rasso does some terrific Forgotten Realms stuff in pieces of it that I don't know anything about.
Oh yeah.
But Eberron, at least, like I said, it was something new, and everybody was just, oh my gosh, here's Eberron finally, there's something else to do. And so, like I said, it just seemed natural to start with that. And the Mornland one did very well, and we did a Demon Wastes one, which was more adventures. It's much more of an adventure book than anything else, and had, again, many people collaborate and write adventures for that. And we also have some pretty deep lore stuff in there and a few new monsters and things like that. But it was mostly an adventure book, and it hasn't done as well, but it is, I think it's, I don't know, it's Electrum or something right now. But
no, there was always that. It's weird. I must admit, I've never quite fully traced out, which is like the case of like monster books tend to do quite well. Collections of encounters do well. Collections of adventures kind of are in that, don't necessarily always. They're on the spectrum. They either go super well, or maybe kind of like towards the bottom. And individual adventures, again, it's kind of like 50-50 on kind of where they go. But I was going to say, you kind of touched on an interesting point more about like the difference between these kind of Eberron and Forgotten Realms. I personally, I do think the Forgotten Realms, it just feels too big. And that's why I feel like they kind of focus so much on like the Sword Coast, because it feels, again, it feels like there's enough in the Sword Coast to kind of keep things going. But with these kind of huge expanding worlds, it's like the case of like, yeah, there's so much, there's too much. It's
Yeah, and Eberron to me actually is the same way. There's so much, and I think if I had one criticism of it is that I think they tried too hard to have something for everyone, rather than just making it what it was and not try to shoehorn in a whole bunch of other things. But because there is a ton of stuff there, and Keith Baker, of course, is still putting out stuff for it and for the various places. But and it's a great setting. I enjoy it, but there's a lot, and like you say, Forgotten Realms is just there's a lot there too.
I suppose if you are the author of the setting, having a really nice expansive world is nice, because it does still give you that freedom of like, well, I can drop this over there and there's been nothing written there, and therefore it just fits with everything else. So it's nice to have like uncharted lands off in the background that you can just keep kind of going back to as and when you need it. No, awesome. No, fantastic. So that's kind of been like a really awesome kind of summary of kind of all the kind of many things you've done, and the kind of the journey you kind of took to get there. I guess more on like a creative process level. If you were to start a new project, let's say tomorrow, what is your creative process? Like how would it necessarily start?
Well, I'm actually working on something that's after Incredible Creatures, which is more of a setting. And right now, I don't necessarily do it the same way as a novel or adventure in thinking about it in an end thing, but mostly it's just a matter of what piques my interest at the time. And I guess that's probably why I've done lots of different things, is because I'm maybe a bit too ADHD and get bored too easily and want to flip onto something else for a while. And like you said earlier, talking about writing, it makes it better if you get stuck on a project, put it down for a little while and say, okay, I'm going to go work on this for a little while. And that gets the juices flowing again. And I'm a lot the same way. It's fun to have a lot of irons in the fire, I guess, at once and see what's going on. But
so one thing so obviously Incredible Creatures was like a Kickstarter project. Has again, because I guess it's almost like the production value of your products over time has naturally increased. Does that kind of shift the way you view projects now? Because now it's less, again, it seems less of like, oh, I can just pick up and write. And now it's more like, okay, I need to get out like the Excel spreadsheet. I need to get like the 50 plus like writers involved.
My plan with this new one is not to involve as many people, for sure. I'm doing the bulk of the writing myself, but but again, I do love the collaborative process, so I'm bringing in a few people here and there to work on things. But it's the guild is terrific for what you can do, but it's also limiting for what you can't do. And so I kind of come from a print background, and I love to do print. And as it is right now, the guild is kind of shut down print projects for the most part. So you can put out a PDF, but if somebody says, hey, I really would like to get this as a hard copy, you can't do it. And so like I said, with Incredible Creatures, it just made more sense to do it as an OGL product on drive-through rather than trying to do it on the guild itself. plus the fact that you can do a Kickstarter that way, and it makes it so. I mean, I'm still, even with the success that it had, we did very well with the Kickstarter. It's still going to be a little while before I get to a break-even point on that project, just because of all the art and all the writing and all that stuff that came with it, that I make sure to pay everybody ahead of time. I'm not doing royalties. They're just getting, they're getting paid for what they're doing. But I'm okay with that, because it's been a lot of fun, and I think it's turning out to be a really terrific product. So.
No, I think you kind of touched on an interesting sub point, which is that the authors who kind of get their start within the DMs Guild, there is always going to be that point in which for the projects they want to do, the DMs Guild isn't necessarily the best place for it.
Right.
Again, it's always a case of like, realistically, if you're not using the Eberron IP or the Forgotten Realms IP, in part of like the cut that DMs Guild takes, it is for the IP and trying to get the most of it and kind of find the most appropriate audience. Yeah, sometimes you do need to spread your wings, fly from the nest and into the bigger ocean of drive-through.
Yeah.
I did want to ask though, again, because it's not too often that we do get to have like people who've run successful Kickstarters on. Is there anything in particular that you would kind of like, I suppose, credit the success of Fantastic Creatures to?
Just honestly, just a lot of legwork. It's a huge undertaking to try to. And I didn't do a very good job, honestly, to start with, but trying to line up people to talk about it, maybe do videos, or people like yourself, that type of thing, to get in and get the word out, because that's the hardest thing. Unless you have, you're somebody like Matt Colville or Critical Role, or somebody that already has a huge audience to begin with, it's difficult to get noticed.
No, I must admit that there is definitely that feeling of almost near daily, multiple times each day, of just, and even sometimes when you I suppose as a parent, you feel like I'm just yelling into the void. It's always a case of like, well, not necessarily, that there is always maybe someone out there.
Right.
And again, in like one of the Kickstarters that I'm involved in, I noticed that I don't know if this is like the key to success or if I've cracked the code, but they put so much legwork into getting up to like 400 followers before the Kickstarter went live. For Comets and Cockpits. That was right. That was like a good chunk of their legwork was literally just getting 400 followers, before the launch of the campaign. So yeah, it's horrible. It's that weird thing to think that even before you start, you have to be promoting, and even once you start, it's a marathon and a sprint.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and I was fortunate to have, I was working with Jeff Stevens again for his Potbelly Kobold Kickstarter, which was a collection of adventures, and I wrote an adventure in there, and then I also did the layout and stuff for him. And so he and I were talking a lot, obviously, not just about the layout, but the Kickstarter itself, and to have that experience right before I did my own was invaluable. You
got all that insider information.
Yeah, because it's definitely a process.
No, because I think that's a good point is the fact that just being involved in a Kickstarter project, you do learn a lot. Like, again, the thing about followers and stuff like that, by being involved in this Kickstarter project, it's taught me something like that, and being able to kind of help Jeff with the Kobolds project. You kind of pick these sort of things up that you realize, okay, there's a lot going on. And yeah, I imagine again, anyone running a Kickstarter project, I'm sure Jeff occasionally needed like not a shoulder to cry on per se, but
sometimes that's necessary too.
Yeah. So then, I guess to pull back from Incredible Creatures, then, and to, again, more to you as like a creative. What would you say is your favorite part of any given project?
Probably at the end of the day, I'd say the writing. Although that collaboration to me is really what is a huge fun. Especially just sitting down and trying to brainstorm with somebody. Okay, well, here's where we kind of want to go. What pieces do we need to put together here? And what other cool things can we put in and have fun with on this? But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm a writer. I enjoy telling stories, so any way I get to do that is good.
No, yeah, fair. And so is it, I suppose, is it, I guess, to kind of use your own words, and is it when writing, do you have like a preference towards writing like the characters or locations, or?
Not really. I mean, it varies just on what I'm feeling that day, but
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoy even writing monsters. I mean, there's still, you have a little bit of lore, descriptive section that you need to do, and it's fun to be able to try to tell a story in a very short amount of words, with that, because usually that piece of it is maybe 300 or 400 words at the most.
Yeah.
And but if you can evoke a story with that, or some, at least some imagery, or spark the imagination of the DM, then that's going to get them to say, oh, that would be really cool in my game, I want to do that.
No, I kind of that kind of touches on nicely, which is often kind of my favorite thing is anytime I have the chance to write in the voice of a character. So very much like in what was it, in Volo's Guide to Monster, they have those little notes around the page.
Yeah.
Sure. Any chance to like I've written a few projects where I've had Volo's voice. So yeah. I think I again that kind of sort of that kind of bravado of like, oh, I know everything. I'm kind of cocksure side of things is yeah, it's fun to write. And then on the vice versa, like any sort of villains and like monologues and all that you can fit in these little chunks. Yeah, no, yeah, we're pretty much, yeah, we're on the same wavelength. Okay then, so the other side of the coin, is there like a least favorite part of the project that you have?
Probably editing. I do it. I have done it for other people on a number of projects as well. But yeah, it can be tedious and not so much fun sometimes. I think that's probably the bugaboo of most writers, actually.
Yeah, I think it is a case of like when you're finishing the first draft, that you have it all there, and in your mind you're like, it's done. All the words are there. That's it. Yeah. Like I've written them down. So, yeah, they must be perfect. And yeah, then that's kind of when you need the kind of the reality check of an editor to come through and go, oh well, no, there's like 7 commas in the sentence, or what have you.
Oh, believe me, I know. I've had editors that worked with me and think, oh gosh, this guy likes his commas for sure.
It's yeah, I must be. I think definitely, yeah. I know that I have a very particular way of writing, and I know it because I've worked with enough editors of what they will pick me up on, and over time you improve. Obviously, you realize. Yeah. But I think there are some things that they're just part. Again, I need all those comments. It's comments. It's part of my creative process to get them in there. And that's why I need an editor to take them out again, because I have no self-control.
Yeah.
No, awesome. Yeah. A good point. I must admit, I've never really edited anyone else's work other than kind of more in like a developmental sense. Just because, yeah, I'd worry about my use of commas, or that's another thing as well. Is I know there is a big thing about N dashes and M dashes. This is again, I'm going to out myself. I don't know the shortcuts for that, and I would hate to deprive an editor of the ability to put N and M dashes in, because it feels like that's like the cherry on top. That's like I've worked so hard, and they go, M dash done, perfect. So
I'm
what?
a big M dash guy, and that's another thing besides commas that I use too much. But so I know exactly what those keystrokes are.
So that's what I mean. Yeah, it's yeah. I like the way I frame it is that I'm doing the editor a service by ensuring that they have things to do. So it's whatever helps me kind of sleep at night. No, fantastic. So then I guess kind of across everything that you've kind of done, from from adventures, encounters, stat blocks, it does sound like you've really kind of diversified and kind of dipped your toes in a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I've tried to. The one thing I haven't done a lot of is player facing material. But even that said, I have done a couple of subclasses, and in fact, I have one in Incredible Creatures. I did a crazy tier 4 monster and decided to make it a patron option for Warlock. So, and that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing that. But
no, it is kind of funny how like I don't know what it is, but sometimes subclasses always feel almost like they're the easiest thing to tack on to like any other product. Because like you're writing an adventure, you have like a particular NPC who's like, okay, they're like they're like an edgy druid, or for example, like I'm pulling something out. They're just like, it'd be cool to let the players be an edgy druid, and that's kind of and yeah, the same way of like, this tier 4. Well, I guess I do have to ask, what is this tier 4 creature that people can have as a patron?
it is called Louvre Pow the Ever-Changing. And it is I kind of went crazy with the mechanics on it too, because it is basically just an amalgam of fleshy parts, and it will, during the fight, it can change size from small to gargantuan each round. It randomly changes sizes, and there's a lot of crazy things that it does. So
I mean, it sounds like you've written six or so creatures in one, essentially, as it kind of changes size.
Yeah. I went a little overboard on that one, but yeah, it was fun.
Well, as I say, we designers, we never really make it easy on ourselves. It's like you think of what's a cool idea. It's like, well, I guess that has to be 6 creatures, and I suppose a warlock subclass as well. It just has to be.
Yeah, one of the other ones I did too was it's kind of this many armed newt creature. Again, all the incredible creatures were based off of art to start with, and so you had a piece of art, and then you wrote a creature based on that. But this one was what do they call it? A pleurodon. That was a creation of a hag at one point that got out of control. But it's basically a super alchemist, and so it has all types of potions and things like that it uses during the battle and whatever. And during the time of designing that, I made a potion of magic enhancement, which also has a potion of wild magic component to it, where sometimes when you make this potion of magic enhancement, it turns into a potion of wild magic, and you don't know. You don't know if it is or not. And so then, as you do, I created a D100 wild magic table for that, just because I've always been frustrated with the fact that WotC was lazy and did only 50 options on their wild magic surge table.
No,
for sorcerers.
I don't know what it is, but I love that wild magic table. So much so that I've made countless items or encounters that kind of make use of that table. Just because it's literally like the heart of D&D of just random chance. And I like that you took spite that it was only 50 when it could have been 100.
Yeah, it's a D100 table. You make 100 options. That just makes sense.
So before we get too far away, you kind of touched on an interesting point about the way you tackled incredible creatures, and that's kind of starting with the artwork, which again I'm not an expert, but that's not necessarily the most traditional approach.
Right, and that's kind of what was the germination for this project to start with was, and I did a similar thing again for the Mornline project where I found a bunch of it was mostly stock art and that I hadn't seen used anywhere, and then asked stuff that to me looked like, hey, that could be in the Mornline, sure. And so then I asked the writers to go in and make a creature. Here's your picture and make a creature based off that. So it went really well and the writers really enjoyed it. And so I thought, well, let's do this whole book based on that. And so I went out and contacted a whole bunch of artists and said, hey, instead of having a writer tell you what this creature is that they want you to draw, I want you to just draw something.
Mm-hmm.
Just make it, whatever it is it's in your mind. And honestly, I had a lot of the artists kind of go, huh? to start with, because they had never had that happen before, and they really got into it. And like I said, the writers have just loved it. So for this, we have each original piece of art actually has 4 monsters attached to it. So one for each tier of play. So you've got a tier 1, CR 0 through, what is it? 4 or 5, yeah. I forget. Anyway, how we split it up for the tiers, but each piece of art has a different writer, 4 different writers and 4 different monsters attached to it. And I think it's really interesting to see how people can look at something and come up with things that are just completely different ideas, for the same piece of art.
It's like a really inventive way, because like 2 things is one, obviously sometimes with more like a traditional approach of like writing the words and then commissioning kind of like bespoke art pieces, you kind of avoid the kind of what all the authors are done, now we just need art kind of side of the second. And yeah, second, like getting full uses out of each piece of art is again, it kind of gets around the idea of like most art pieces are already tied to these very sort of niche kind of like pages, and it's like you're getting the most. You kind of like this creature can be literally anything for any given campaign.
Right, and that was why I wanted to do one for each tier, so that everybody, anybody looking at the book, and they say, well, gosh, I really just, I need this particular CR or something like that for my group right now, they're going to be able to find something in there for it for sure.
Were there any particular creatures though? Because like, again, my mind goes straight to like goblins. Were there any sort of particular drawings of creatures that were just like, I don't know how to make this tier 4? It's literally like, it's like a cute teddy bear. How do I make this tier? Were there any sort of like cases like that, or were generally they?
We had what I did with this was I got a group of writers together, and everybody, I did it as a submission basis, so that we had several people write monsters for one for each tier for these images. And so I hired a couple of great editors, Christopher Walls and Terry Herc. And the 3 of us kind of got together and selected, once the submission process was over, we said, okay, this one's really good, and this one maybe needs some work, and we went back to the writers to help them flesh things out a little bit. But it honestly was really amazing that the stuff that people came up with we've got some like there's one piece of art is kind of a cute boa constrictor snake with wings type of thing, and it has very cute little baby ones with duckling wings and and that type of thing. So but we have tier 1 through 4 monsters for that. And
I suppose, like, again, I suppose my mind would go straight to like, okay, well, if you want to make something tier 4, you just make it bigger. Just you take the image and just imagine, oh, this is now gargantuan size, and there you go. It's a little bit of a bigger threat.
Yeah. And there's certainly some of that in there as well, but for, like I said, for the most part, there's some really creative stuff going on for what the writer, I can't commend the writers enough for what they came up with. So
no, that's fantastic. No, again, it's yeah, I've had the chance to kind of look over like an earlier version, and yeah, it's coming together nicely. It's looking really good. So then, one thing I kind of wanted to ask, I guess more broadly again, to pull the camera back slightly, across kind of everything that you've done, are there any particular design choices that you've made that you've kind of like been particularly proud of?
Well, honestly, recently that the Warlock patron, I think, came out really well. It's and it plays off of the fact that creature is just chaos incarnate and changing all the time, and so the Warlock patron subclass deals with you can either roll or pick a kind of a body changing aspect, like your hair or your nails, or stuff grows incredibly fast, or there's other options that you can pick, and it also allows you to each day you roll on a table, the D4 table, to see which class of spells you have access to that day.
Interesting.
So then it's Bard, Cleric, Druid, and Wizard. Yeah, are the ones. So you roll each time you finish a long rest, you roll on this, and then you see which class of spells you have access to that day. So as far as Warlock spells, they're Warlock spells for you.
It really kind of captures that sort of, I guess, that ever-changing aspect.
Right.
Is there still much of like the size changing? Is it like day to day you can go from like being tiny or are you do?
No, I didn't include that in there, but like I said, you can. I gave it the option. You can either pick at your character generation. You can pick which one you wanted, or you can even do every time you change your spells, then you change your this thing that happens to your body, and then it also gets where you can create a little flesh golem, a small flesh golem kind of creature at I think 6th level. I don't remember which, but things like that where you get to be or have aspects of malleable flesh.
I must admit, it's always kind of like designing to like a particular theme is always kind of where you have those kind of, I guess, like bouts of inspiration and just kind of creativity of kind of going off in the best way, going off the wall and going off into the weird directions. Like, yeah, they should have like a little flesh homunculus. Of course they should.
Yeah.
Nice. So then I guess on the I was about to say on the other side of the coin, just because that's my favorite phrase. But is there a particular lesson that you've learned over the course of writing, all these kind of tabletop RPG projects that in hindsight you wish you maybe learned sooner?
Well, as far as writing goes, I think the best piece of advice that I can give is to write what you enjoy and what's fun for you, because that's always going to come out better than just writing to say, well, I really should write something for Forgotten Realms because that's what's popular or something like that. If it's not something that you're just really passionate about, it's going to fall flat more often than not, and that's something that, again, when I first started out, I thought, oh, okay, I'll write these adventures for this, that, and the other thing, and some of them worked okay, and some of them didn't, and that just doing things that, again, that you're passionate about and that you are excited about is always going to come out better.
I think it's kind of it's you can see the passion within the writing and stuff like that, and particularly especially when you're getting like feedback from your editor, you hope it kind of seeps in, like in between all the commas, obviously. the editor's like, oh yeah, clearly there's there's something going on here. Kind of solid advice, and sometimes sometimes you don't necessarily know that you're not passionate about a project until you kind of hit that point where you're just like, oh, I might need to step away from this. which it sucks because you kind of there's kind of like that sunk cost fallacy. But I mean, again, it's if you're doing it as a hobby, don't force yourself through stuff that you're not passionate about. Just find something you are.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, awesome. So then I guess to pivot and look more to the community and the future as a whole. You kind of mentioned that you've got the next thing kind of lined up, this kind of setting. Would you say like getting like a setting guide out there is something like a dream project of yours, or is there still something that you kind of want to, I don't know, tick off the list?
Yeah, definitely. It's and I'm doing a lot with it. I've got several. There's going to be several races. I've got already 2 or 3 subclasses with it, and psionics.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm taking much larger bites than I probably should out of this one, but it's going to be, it'll have a lot, and it's definitely kind of a wish list dream type of thing. And that was another reason for wanting to kind of step away from the guild a little bit, because everybody always has their own ideas about things and what they want to do, and again, it's wonderful to be able to have those settings, Forgotten Realms, Eberron, etc., to be able to write for. But I think everybody gets to the point where they think, well, yeah, you know what, this is great, but I should really like to do this on my own thing on X, Y, or Z, whatever it happens to be. And so you have to kind of step away from the guild on that and say, okay, well, this is something all its own, and try that yourself and see how it goes.
If you don't mind me asking, obviously, like this could be a little bit while away, but are you prepared to are you happy to announce like a high concept of what your setting is, or do you want to keep that all kind of close to the chest?
Sure. No, it's called the Eye of Everywhere. Ooh. And it is it basically is a portal to everywhere kind of place where there's a city around it. I mean, D&D has their own type of thing. I can with sigil or sigil, however you want to pronounce it.
both pronunciations are welcome here.
Yeah, I've seen it both ways for people, but this is along those lines, but it's more science fiction-y than or science fantasy than that is, I think. And so again, that's kind of why I'm tackling psionics. I'm doing the whole class for that, and I've got a race of intelligent robot creatures, and then we'll have a bunch of other races and things like that are again more science fiction-y that you can play in a 5e setting. So
no, it does. It sounds awesome. Yeah, I do like the kind of amount of freedom you get with the kind of portal realms, or whatever you call it. Is again, it kind of it's like we were saying about was it any kind of like setting with like Uncharted Islands. You just have portals that can go anywhere. So again, you always have the freedom to kind of expand, because they're just like, oh, there's a hidden portal, or what have you. It's clever. You got to keep those options open.
Yeah, and it's something that could be attached to really any campaign. Mm-hmm. If you're running say a Forgotten Realms or something, and your players are kind of getting bored with it, and you say, well, okay, here's somebody comes and plucks you out and puts you in this place, and now what are you going to do?
I mean, that's actually like a really nice point of particularly with products on the guild is doing your best to kind of facilitate it being drag and drop to any sort of campaign. Obviously, you have the easy ones where it's like it's tied to a particular hardcover, But there are numerous ways to kind of keep things as setting agnostic or as easy to kind of like move about as possible. And it sounds like you've kind of already kind of kept that in mind with you're saying. No, fantastic, and so I imagine it's off in the near horizon. I don't want to like push for a timeline or anything like that because.
Oh well, I don't know right now. I'm like I said, there's a lot of writing going on, and I'm actually running a play test with a group right now for some of the adventures, and then also just some of the mechanics and things. I'm still finishing up. I had a psionic system done, and then basically scrapped most of that because it was too complicated and it needed to be more. Just from the feedback that I've gotten, it needs to be more like spell casting, 5e spell casting, I think. So that is, I don't know, 75-80% done at this point. And then again, there's just a whole lot of there's, I don't know, maybe a dozen different factions of that are inhabiting this city that's around the actual portal place and that type of thing. So there's a whole lot of, and then I'm also including, if you're affiliated with one of those factions, then you get some benefits because of that for your character and things, all that sort of thing. So I don't, it's hard to say. It would be nice to be able to maybe launch. My plan right now is to launch a Kickstarter, and maybe towards the end of the year for that. Would be terrific, but we'll just have to see.
I suppose was it the best laid plans of mice and men? No, fantastic. Dude, fingers crossed that it all goes according to plan. It sounds exciting. And I guess again, compared to the one thing that has kind of been a trend through our chat is just the sheer number of kind of people that you've had the kind of the ability to kind of work alongside with in collaborations and all that. I was just curious if there was like any particular people that you kind of wanted to highlight of, like, who in the tabletop RPG community who kind of particularly inspires you.
Oh gosh, who hasn't? Again, Jeff Stevens has been a terrific person to work with. RP Davis, I've done a lot of stuff with from the beginning. The editors I'm working with, again, Christopher Walls and Terry Herc, that were working with me on Credible Creatures. There's holy moly, some other writers I've worked with in the past. Kat Evans is terrific. Can't say enough about her. We've got several people on Incredible Creatures that I've worked with for the first time here and that are just amazing. Kirsty Kidd, Nathan Doyle, Michael Sharp, Luke Russell. Gosh, I don't know. I start naming names. I mean, there's so many people, and that I have worked with. Joe Rasso is another one that's done a lot of fantastic stuff. Tony Petrecka, and it was just the community itself has been just amazing in my view. People just willing to jump in and help and or offer advice or anything else. There's a lot of people out there that I've maybe worked with a little bit, but I would love to work with more, like Oliver Darkshire and Alex Clippinger, MT Black. Now I was joking. Alex was on, I think, Ginny Loveday's show, and she's another one too.
Yeah. But
a week or so ago, and I was in the chat there and joked because MT Black had actually asked Alex and I to work on a project. It was right before he got accepted into the Guild Debt program, and then he didn't have time anymore. And so, but that's something else that I wouldn't mind doing someday, would be to do that again. So.
Like there's an alternate timeline out there where everything aligned.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And especially with, again, being involved in projects with like 50+ authors. To to be able to remember all 50 names would be a Hercule. A really hard task. I was going to try and say Hercule. I can't say it. It'll be a big job. I'm just going to say keep the language simple so I can actually say the word. But yeah, no, wow. It's so many sort of amazing people, and I can only kind of echo your statement that the DMsGuild community is incredibly supportive, and that's kind of what makes it so great.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, so I kind of hate to say it, Alan. Looking at the time, we have we've done it. We've managed to chat our way through an hour. But one thing I do want to do is, before we kind of get far away, is arguably the two most important questions. One, what are you currently working on? And two, where can people hear about your work and stay up to date with everything?
Well, once again, Incredible Creatures is what's taking up most of my time right now. We've got the Kickstarter had a stretch goal where we added 5 more images, which means 20 more monsters.
Wow.
And those are being written as we speak. I've got actually a deadline of tomorrow for the writers on that. So we're hoping those will get into editing and then start in layout. A big portion of the layout is already done on it. We're over 200 pages, and it's going to be probably close to 250 by the time we're finished.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that'll be the target for that, is to come out sometime in June. That'll be available on drive-through. And then as far as where to find out about stuff, probably the best place is Twitter. I'm at Tucker Author on Twitter, and and then I roam around several Discord channels. But like I said, if you want to get a hold of me, usually just shoot me a DM on Twitter, and I'll get to you eventually.
Yeah, it's a nebulous amount of time between incident and maybe a few days.
Yeah.
No, 100%. And yeah, there'll be links in the description, obviously, to your Twitter and all the appropriate links that people need to be able to find you and throw that message your way. But Alan, thank you so much for taking some time.
Thanks for having me.
This has been a delight and an insightful chat. That I was going to go for a rhyme, it didn't work. Either way, it's been fun. Let me just say that rather than anything else.
Agreed.
But yeah, I've been Matthew Whitby. You can find me at Whitby Writes. Some semi-exciting goals hit. Was it Madam Eva's Taroka deck of Friends, Foes, and Fortunes recently hit Copper, which is always an exciting milestone. There's another. I've been involved with Waterdeep Patrons, which is a new product which basically takes the Eberron's patron system as well as other things and gives them for everyone in Waterdeep. So I took a swing at making Volo your patron, because I can't stay away from the man. And as well as the Church of Lathander, among some others. So there'll be a link to that in the description. I think there are some Kickstarter campaigns that I'm involved in still going, but at this point I've lost track of time, so some of them may have already finished. So if they're in the description, please check them out. If not, don't worry about it. And yeah, that is pretty much it. So we turn to the very last question of the podcast then, which is how do you end a podcast?
Well, I'm old, so to me, the classic is Porky Pig. That's all, folks.